Taoqi was one of those characters that had the most attraction during CBT2, and her kit was pretty good too. She has the potential to be a solo carry character with her self-healing abilities, damage reduction, and shielding capability. And during CBT2, she would absolutely nuke enemies with her Resonance Liberation. She is the best option for players who do not have healers like Verena and Baiji. Here is the best Taoqi build guide based on CBT2 to help you going into global release. Now, I do want to mention that there are changes to Taoqi, which doesn't surprise me at all. So for this guide, I'm going to cover her support role only instead of her DPS role as well, still based on CBT2 information because it is still a good reference for those wanting to go into the game prepared. I will be updating all the character guides with global release and tagging these CBT2 guides so that there are no misunderstandings.
I like this.
Okay, let's start with Taoqi's kit. Taoqi is unique because she is one of the few characters that scales with defense apart from some of her basic attacks. Taoqi has a 4-part basic attack combo that scales off attack. Her heavy attack puts her in the rock steady defense state that will last 3 seconds. In this state, Taoqi takes 35% reduced damage. If you release the heavy attack button during this state, Taoqi will do a heavy attack that scales off attack percent. If you are attacked or complete the 3-second duration, Taoqi will instead perform a counter attack called strategic parry that will deal damage based on her defense. This is the one you want. Her resonance skill will also deal damage based on her defense and generate 3 rock steady shields. Now, the name is rock steady shield, but they don't actually provide shields. They're more like rock steady plates because they only reduce damage received by a fixed 15%. These plates will remain on any active character and can be consumed in 3 ways. The first way is by taking damage. Every instance of damage will consume 1 rock steady shield plate. The second way is to trigger Taoqi's 4th basic attack, which will consume all rock steady shield plates. And the third way is to have the rock steady shield plate duration expire, which is 15 seconds by default and 30 seconds with her sequence 2. For every 1 rock steady shield plate that is consumed, Taoqi will gain 1 bar on her Forte gauge with a maximum of 3 bars. This is what you constantly want to obtain with Taoqi. So to get the maximum Forte in the shortest time possible, Taoqi will start with her resonance skill and either perform a full basic attack combo so that she reaches her 4th basic attack, or you can take damage with Taoqi and perform a rock steady defense when you are about to take damage with 1 rock steady plate remaining, or you can swap to a different character and take damage with them. So what do you do when you have Forte gauge bars? To use her Forte gauge bars, you will need to perform timed counter follow-up attacks. You will again have 3 options. The first option is to cast a resonance skill when Taoqi is about to take damage. Keep in mind this is on a 15-second cooldown, so may not always be an option. The second option is to perform the strategic parry from her rock steady defense heavy attacks. This is the easiest way because it can be from the same rock steady defense used to consume the plates. The third option is to trigger her intro skill, which will allow you to immediately perform the time counter follow-up attacks. What the time counter attacks are is a 3-part combo triggered by pressing left click on your mouse after triggering one of those 3 options. This damage scales on defense and is buffed by a basic attack damage boost. Each part of the time counter attack will consume 1 bar of her Forte gauge and generate a stackable shield. Now this shield is the actual shield that absorbs damage before decreasing character HP instead of just reducing damage like with the rock steady shield plates. One thing to note is that you cannot dodge, sprint, or be hit before or during her timed counter follow-up attacks because it will interrupt the combo, so you won't consume Forte bars or generate shields. That is the basics of Taoqi's shield generation and rotation. Before activating her outro skill, it's best to make sure that you've used her resonance skill followed by resonance liberation, as her defense is increased when triggering her inherent skill and her liberation is a high defense scaling nuke. The playstyle in Wuthering Waves requires characters to spend a bit of time on field before they can fully utilize their kit for your team, so you won't be finding characters that you just use as skill and liberation then just swap out in the early versions. Now that we're all on the same page with the kit, let's talk about her best weapon for her support playstyle. Very quickly, if you have seen the guide for Gianna and Calcharo, you will know that the Autumn Trace from the Battle Pass is insanely cracked at rank 5, beating or competing with rank 1 versions of the 5-star Broadblades. When it comes to Taoqi, an R5 Autumn Trace in CBT2 provided a 174% defense increase, which made this weapon unrealistically stronger than any other weapon, so I am not going to include this weapon for her because it should receive a giga nerf with global release. The best weapon is going to be Dauntless Evernight. It is the only weapon of 4-star and 5-star rarity that provides a defense boost with its secondary stat, and its passive aligns with her kit. Now, this weapon is suggested requested to receive a buff with its passive, which will make it even stronger for Taoqi. An alternative and the base for her optimal shield ratio is the 3-star weapon, the Originite Type 1. Rank 1 to 5 for this weapon will not improve her shielding amount, only her damage output. An alternative is the Broadblade 41 if Taoqi uses the Rejuvenating Glow Echo Sonata set. You can get this weapon for free from an NPC in Tiger's Maw and will provide Taoqi with an attack boost for her standard basic attacks and increase her HP restoration. Now that we've covered her weapons, there are actually 2 echo sets that work extremely well for Taoqi in her supportive role. I would highly recommend watching this team comp guide video if you want a full understanding, but in short, Taoqi can fill the role of a team-wide support buffer or a DPS buffer. My personal recommendation would be to play Taoqi as a team-wide support buffer if you do not have healers like Verena and Baiji, especially for Tower of Adversity. As a team-wide buffer, Taoqi will use the Rejuvenating Glow Echo set. I mentioned before that you can use the Broadblade number 41 if Taoqi uses this set. Dauntless Evernight is still better, but Broadblade is a solid fix for her energy problems. The reason is that Taoqi will be the one on field when building her shield, so you will not swap to a different character while consuming her Rocksteady shield plates. This allows Taoqi to take reduced damage with her Rocksteady shield plates and can heal herself for the damage loss and then provide shields afterwards so that the damage is fully absorbed by shield when other team members are on the field and they won't lose HP. This means that Taoqi serves as a preservation character. The alternative echo set is the 5-piece Moonlit Cloud. This does limit her support buffs to being a DPS buffer rather than a team-wide buffer because of the 5-piece effect. This also eliminates any energy issues you may have, so Broadblade 41 is not needed. And since you will ideally use Dauntless Evernight with this echo set, you will deal more damage during her rotations. So to simplify this, as a team-wide support, Taoqi is better with Rejuvenating Glow to eat all the damage, improve healing, and buff your entire team's damage. As a DPS buffer, Taoqi is best with the Moonlit Cloud set to have quick rotations with high damage output and full buffs for your DPS main carry. When it comes to echo stats, Taoqi is definitely one of the easier characters to farm for. For her main stats, defense percent is going to be the best across all echoes. This will provide the maximum amount of shield and self-healing for Taoqi, but it is not the most optional for damage. Okay, so I decided to add this in while I was editing this video. I said I won't cover her DPS role because of the changes in global release that affect her rotations and weapon choice, but I still want to cover her DPS echo setup because it can still be used on a support role, and you will have a minimum of 17% weaker shields so you can tank less damage. And this only works with Dauntless Evernight and Originite Type 1. The echo formation will be a 4-4-3-1 for the setup. You will be on a 2-piece Havoc Eclipse and 2-piece Moonlit Clouds. Both the Overlord echoes will be on crit rate, while your Elite echo and Common echo will be on defense percent. For the substats, your priorities will be crit rate, crit damage, defense percent, basic attack damage bonus, and HP percent. The Balborn weekly boss will be a better choice for your echo skill compared to the Crownless. Okay, back to a support role build. It all depends on how you want to play Taoqi, whether you want maximized shields or sacrifice some shield for extra damage. For her substats, defense percent is the best to buff both her damage and preservation capabilities. Basic attack damage bonus is your best damage buffer for Taoqi because her timed counter follow-up attacks are considered basic attacks. Energy recharge is of equal importance to basic attack damage bonus if you are not using Broadblade 41. Lastly, HP percent is very important for Taoqi's survivability at higher levels, as she does have very low base HP, and even with so much defense and damage reduction and self-healing, enemies that deal nuclear damage do exist. Other filler stats can be Resonance Liberation damage bonus, Resonance Skill damage bonus, and flat defense. So now that we've covered the core of Taoqi, let's talk about her talents or Forte page. To maximize her shield, you will want to have her Forte circuit first. This will increase her follow-up attack damage. Afterwards, leveling her Resonance skill will improve her self-healing. Her damage reduction is a fixed amount. Her intro skill and Resonance Liberation are of equal importance to level. And lastly, her basic attack. Her intro skill is useful when you have multiple cycles of your rotation because you will end her rotation after using her Resonance skill. So when starting her cycle again, you can immediately proc shield and have a shorter rotation with Taoqi. Man, I hope I've made that simple enough to understand. The first inherit skill is very important because it provides a 15% defense increase, while she has rock steady shield plates, which buffs every part of a kit that scales on defense. I don't usually cover sequences for these CBT2 build guides, but for those who want to run Taoqi as a DPS, her S2, S4 and S6 are incredible DPS buffs. Her S1 is a significant shield increase, which allows you to sacrifice defense for havoc damage bonus. Finally, what teams will Taoqi work well in? As I've mentioned, Taoqi is a viable replacement for a healer since there are only 2 real options for healers and one is a 5-star. This means she can work in most teams if she is built as a team-wide buffer. As a single teammate buffer, Taoqi is limited to her outro skill and the Moon Cloud set as her only means and does not provide off-field damage. So this limits your options to characters that have good resonant scale damage. That is going to be all for this guide. I will see you in the next video.